Hi everybody. In this video I'd like to just take a few minutes to answer some questions you may have. So it's kind of a Q&A video. And one of them you may have, or one criticism you might make of my recordings, is maybe I'm moving too slowly in the videos. So video is too slow, as maybe this one is. And I mean, number of these, what the heck. And the response, or one response I can make there, is you can always speed them up. In YouTube, you can make them twice as fast as they are. So if I'm going too slowly, the simple thing to do is just to speed up the videos. Too fast, there's always the option to pause and reflect and check out what I'm doing and actually repeat the video. So I think that's sort of an advantage of these YouTube videos, is that you can pause them and contemplate them. If they're not clear, there's lots of options here. One is you can ask people questions in class. You can ask me in class for clarification. You can ask other people in your team. You can ask anyone you want to help you figure out, well, what's not clear in this video. Maybe someone else it is clear to. Maybe you need to ask me. So I don't want to make these videos. I mean, there's good things about the videos, and that is you can watch them whenever you want. You can pause them. You can make them go faster. You can skip over sections. That's all where videos are a bit better than lectures, I think, or live lectures. The detriment is you can't raise your hand and ask a question, but I'm trying to enable that during class. So we have really a long amount of lab time where you can ask questions and say, hey, that wasn't clear. Can you explain this or whatever? So I'm hoping that that'll remedy this. And the other thing I should mention is you don't need to watch the videos. I mean, if there's another way, if you learn to learn something in a better way, doing something else, reading, watching a different video on YouTube, whatever, that's perfectly fine. So, for example, you may already know Git, so you can feel free to skip the Git video or read an article about Git. So that's the video problem. One thing that's kind of my mistake is not being clear about const, var, and let. And that is my error. That's my mistake. Some mistakes were made in explaining these videos. And let me go to this to-do thing. So really, and you can kind of see this up here where I screw up. var is kind of old school JavaScript, and that's just reflecting me being old and not the latest. So really the difference is most of the time between whether you should use const for constant or let. And the difference really is, will this variable be reassigned? So I think a lot of these probably could be const. And that one also const. I don't think that'll reflect this. This is const. So really, a lot of these probably are const. If there are things that may change, please use, let me just find one here, this response unlikely to change, but let's suppose it does. There I would use let. So my answer here is I really bollocksed up and screwed up in explaining or showing this. It's my bad habits. Don't use var, use let, and if it's a value that's not going to change, use const. So that's my lecture about const, var, and let, and I'm screwing up in the videos. It's nothing that relates to you. And the other thing I wanted to talk a bit about is the names of variables. So a lot of times I'm using them. It's sort of in a convention that a lot of people use them, but it's not required. So the names of variables by convention, and one example might be this app. That can be named, obviously, and I could name that anything, but the convention is that I call it app, and that's what I do. So I'm just following kind of conventional rules. There's nothing required about naming variables the way they are. It's just this convention, and so I guess it's good practice, but feel free to use whatever, if something better suits you, you can use that. I wanted to just talk a little bit about map because it's sometimes confusing to people and may have been good in this to-do. So suppose instead of returning all the to-dos and their priority, I just wanted to return a list of the text strings of the to-dos. And let me show you that sort of away from the to-do JavaScript, this whole program, and just isolate that as an example. And for that I have this. So I've created a little data structure, a list of JSON objects with a task and a priority. And let's say I just want to extract these tasks, skip the priority. For that, I'm going to use a map statement. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. And I'll stick with my let, even though I was just saying it may not be the best thing to do. And I'll call those tasks, let's say. And what I'm going to do is map a function to this. So for every element in that list, I'm going to map a function to this element. So it'll first map to this one, map to this element, map to this one, and then return a list of all the values I return. And this this function is going to have one argument. I'll call it item. So I just invented that term, and I'm creating a function here. And what this function is going to do is just return the task part of the string. So return, that would be item dot task. Okay, that looks fine to me. And now let's just log that. Console log. Now let me change into the right directory here. And execute it. And you see here's where it's printing out. And you see that I am extracting just the beginning part, or just the task part of each of these entries. So map is really kind of a cool thing to use in JavaScript, or perhaps you've been using it in other languages as well. But it's something that you should really know, and it can be useful in upcoming work we're doing. So I just wanted to explain map. Okay, another question you may have is, let me get back to my question. So I explained map. What's the difference between console log and console error? Because I was sort of inconsistent. Well, not sort of. I was inconsistent in my to-do code. I noticed that I had at one point here is a console error when I caught an error, and one's a console log. And here's the difference. And let me get to this. So for console error, that output goes to standard error. If I can spell standard error. So that's where that goes. And console log goes to standard out. So if I'm writing these to files, they might go to different places. So remember, standard out just uses that redirect of that type, and standard, which you perhaps learned in the 225 class, and standard error uses that. It's the number 2 pipe if we're piping it somewhere else. And let me just give you an example of that. So let me not use this test here and just, well, let me make some new file. All right, so let's go console.log. Hello there. And console.error. Okay, that's pretty basic. And let me call that test, or my.js. What the heck? All right, so let me run that. Let me clear this. And it prints both to the screen, so it looks pretty identical. But let me do a redirect. So I'm going to redirect all errors to a file. For that, I can do node my.js, and again, I'm sure you learned this in 225, and give it a file, error.log file. So it just prints hello there, this where I did a console log, and error was redirected to this error.log file, cat. And so that text is in error.log. What happens if I do 2 redirects? So here's that. I'm redirecting the errors to error log, and I'm redirecting all console log to my output.log file. So errors go to error log, and regular output.log. So now if I see what's in output.log, it's hello there. And if I go to error.log, it's error, this does not compute. So in my test, everything was going to the screen and it looked all the same, but I should have been consistent, and I probably should have put all the errors, the catch, when I catch an exception, I should have been printing those to console error. So there is a difference. One goes to standard error and one goes to standard output. Some people asked about the backtick, so let me explain backtick and stick with my JS. So, well, I can just use this here. All right. Hey, let's have a variable here. So I have Ann as a name. Here, if I hello there, Ann, or name rather, obviously that's not going to give us Ann, but let's just run it just to make sure. And let me just run it directly. And it says hello there name. Let me get rid of that error because it's sort of distracting me. So it said hello there name. I can create a that as a variable. Like interpret that as a variable. I saved it. I'll print it. And it still doesn't show up. But if I instead now use backticks. Oops, there's too many of them now. That variable gets replaced. So that's the function of backticks. So single quotes rather. Don't interpret it, but backticks do interpret it. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was in Postman here, I can remember that I showed you that $sign and some variables there. I can say what parameters I want here, and they get replaced in the string by that, the question mark notation. And I'll explain that in a second. So I can say, I think it was weight, and then the value was 191, let's say. And a new key can be height, and that's 250. Wait, I got this. That'd be pretty high, 74. And you see they're getting replaced here. And let me just make that a tad bigger here. So that was number 8 was a Postman get question. So that looks like this. So when we're going HTTP, localhost, port 8080, API, BMI, I don't know what I called it, but let's just say I did that. The first argument, so the first thing we do when we're passing arguments, and there'd be a question mark here, and then an argument like weight equals something, 100 pounds. And then the next, the separation for arguments is this ampersand. So height equals 74. But we can type, with Postman, we can type them here. So that's what and automatically get placed up here. So that's kind of a little bit about what I didn't explain about Postman, but that's how it works. And that's pretty much it, I think, for the questions this time. Let me just take a little look here at my question list. Yep, so that is it. I hope that was helpful. I'll be alert to other questions people may have and create another short video kind of explaining things I missed. Thanks. Bye.